Welcome back to The Grind. In this video, we're going to talk about the LotusBloom Mythic Invoker and Warrior spell details. Before we get into the details, the important thing to know about the Mythics is they will now cost 18 keys, but each branch throughout the season will give 6 keys that will be spread out through the branch. And when I know what the layout of these keys will be, I will do a video on how I best recommend getting a Mythic this season. We do know that there are 2 discount branches this season, so getting as much out of those discount lines as you can within the first 2 weeks will be very helpful in obtaining a Mythic this season. So now let's talk about Nausea, the Earth Mythic Invoker. I am very excited about a Mythic Invoker again, but I am a little bit disappointed that it is the Earth element. So now let's talk about Nausea's spells. Nausea will have the invoke shot called Smite, which will deal 15 times the dragon's attack power as damage to a target tower. I would expect that it will have the same hitbox as most of the other Hunter's Death Gaze type spells do, which means that technically if you hit the right spot, you can hit some setups and kill 3 of the front towers on Island 3. But regardless, most likely this spell will be able to hit 2 towers side by side. I am a little bit disappointed with the 15 times damage because that means that in some situations with certain bases, Morak, the legendary invoker from last season, would actually be able to destroy higher level bases, even defended, than this dragon would be able to. Simply because Morak's invoke shot does 25 times the dragon's attack power as damage. The next spell is Mark of Tribute, which is an active red 0 rage spell that will mark a tower, and when that tower is destroyed, it will heal the dragon for 20% HP and restore 1 rage and have a 5-second cooldown. This is very similar to Hunter's Mark, but the very important difference to note is it costs 0 rage and only restores 1 rage. Now, this is very important because this dragon has limited ways to dodge mage shots, and so when it is completely mage drained, this spell can still be used, which is very important and may actually make this dragon viable in situations where otherwise it would not be. The next spell is Protector's Resolve, which is a very important spell for Nausea. It's a toggle spell, it is a white spell, and it is a rage draining spell that drains rage over time. It will drain 0.33 rage per second. And while it is active, it will block 100% of all incoming damage. And it has no cooldown because it's a toggle spell. So even if an ice flak disables this spell, it can be used immediately following with no cooldown. And finally, Nausea will have Turn the Tide, an active white 1 rage spell that will cloak the dragon, and upon uncloaking will damage towers for 8% of dragon's HP and grant 50% increased breath damage for 2 seconds, and it will have a 1-second cooldown. With the 1-second cooldown, you will be able to break this cloak early and continue to dodge multiple shots from towers, like you have been able to with other dragons like Khalisid. The problem is, you will not be able to deal damage to towers between cloaking because the ammo doesn't regenerate fast enough to use it to cancel the cloak. And only using 1 shot between each cloak doesn't make sense because then you would not be dealing any damage to the towers. If you wanted to try to dodge multiple flak shots while your ammo was regenerating, you would have to use spells like Mark of Tribute and Protector's Resolve in order to cancel the cloak and then cloak right away again before towers fire. I do not know if this will be a very beneficial strategy, but after we talk about the runes and glyphs, we'll go through some possible ways of flying this dragon. The runes and glyphs will decrease the Mark of Tribute cooldown and increase Invoker HP. I was hoping for an Invoker attack rune, but unfortunately that will not be provided. However, this Mark of Tribute cooldown reduction will be very important because this dragon will rely on this spell to continue to fund health and rage to keep the dragon in the fight. So with Nausea, and most invokers, if you're attacking towers much higher level than you, you can really only destroy 1 tower or 2 towers every 3 to 4 seconds when the ammo regenerates. Now, depending on the layout, you may be able to take out 2 critical towers with 1 shot. However, if a base is set up well, then their critical towers will be separated on separate corners, and you'll have to take them out one at a time. Now, if Nadja's Invoke Shot has the same splash range as Morak and other hunters, then it is possible to destroy 3 towers in the front of Island 3, but that is a very specific situation, so we're not going to really rely on that as we discuss our strategy. So for Nausea, there are really 2 types of towers that are critically dangerous for Nausea. That is the Ice Flak and the Mage towers, especially the Red Mage, because that prevents Nausea from placing Mark of Tribute. So you would want to focus your first Invoke Shot on probably the Mage towers or the Ice Flak. I would probably recommend firing it at the Ice Flak first because it would be easier to dodge multiple Mage Drain super shots if consecutively fired rather than trying to dodge the Ice Flak multiple times, which is very challenging. You could have Protector's Resolve active as you come into facing the island. That way, if you cannot dodge the flak shots quick enough, it doesn't matter because they won't deal damage. After you destroy the Ice Flak, you'll have to wait 3 seconds before you can destroy the Mage towers, and so you would probably want to use Turning the Tide and cancel it before it ends so that you can use it again 1 second later to avoid a second round of Mage shots if there are more super shots active. The worst case scenario would be an Ice Flak in the back left or right, the Red Mage in the middle, and the other Blue Mage on one of the other back sides, because that would require 3 separate Invoke Shots to destroy each of those critical towers, meaning you may need to cloak with Turning the Tide multiple times before the Mage towers are now no longer a threat. The second tower I would focus after the Ice Flak would be the Red Mage so that you can place Mark of Tribute on the next tower. My concern is that with every 3 seconds to have an Invoke Shot, once you've destroyed, in the worst case scenario, those 3 critical towers, you may have already flown over top of the other towers on the front of the island and have lost the chance to destroy them. So you might have to sacrifice taking shots from a Mage tower. But if you already have Mark of Tribute placed, and since it only costs 0 rage, it doesn't matter if you do get rage drained, you can still recover some rage before you leave the island, but it is obviously less ideal to get hit by Mage Drain because it freezes your rage regeneration as well. So now let's talk about best case scenario. A lot of bases these days do not have blue mages. They will have a red mage in the middle and an ice flak. So if they do have this setup, it would be much easier because once you take out the mage and the ice flak, you can sit there with Protector's Resolve and take all the damage, not lose any health, and take your time destroying each tower with the invoke shots. My main concern for Nausea is that because if you're attacking higher level towers, the 3 regular ammo will probably not be enough to destroy a single tower, especially if there's defenders using hammers. So I wonder if there will be enough time to destroy every single tower, especially on a long island, without a way to immediately regenerate ammo like Morak does, for example. When it comes down to it, I am excited for this dragon. I will most likely get this dragon unless there is a lot of disappointment with it. Unfortunately, I feel like Morak, if flown very well, has the potential to hit higher level, stronger bases even with defenders. But if with Nausea you're able to avoid being mage drained, I think this dragon will be easier to fly because it has a way to cloak frequently and to have a barrier that will block 100% of damage if you are able to continue and maintain rage and not get mage drained. Next we will talk about Danav, the Mythic Wind Warrior. I really like the design of this dragon with the multiple arms, the weapons, as well as the design of the head and the face with the horns, and I think there's even a crown on him. I actually am very tempted to consider this dragon for that reason, as well as the spells and the possibility of using them as a perch dragon. This dragon's spells actually look very good as well. The main thing you will struggle with is mage towers being mage drained, as well as just keeping up with the rage cost for all of his spells. The first spell he has is Cower in Fear, which is an active red 1 rage spell that damages nearby towers for 6% of dragon's modified HP and freezes them for 3.5 seconds. This will stop projectiles in the air, and it has no cooldown, so you can use it over and over again to keep towers frozen as long as there is no red mage protecting them. This seems very ridiculously strong as long as you can get the red mage dealt with, or if you've already destroyed the red mages with a lead dragon. The next spell is Destroyer's Wrath, which is a toggle white spell that drains rage over time, 0.33 rage per second, and while active will increase Dragon's breath damage by 250%, which is the same as Gig's increased breath damage. So this will do a lot of extra damage, and it has no cooldown, so you can toggle it on and off whenever you want, and when you're hit by an ice flak, it will disable it, but immediately after you can activate it again. The next spell is Delight in Destruction, which is an active blue 1 rage spell that restores 3 rage on cast, and for 4 seconds the dragon will heal for 12% health whenever a tower is destroyed. And it will have a 4-second cooldown, so you can use this spell every 8 seconds, and you will have to spend 1 rage to get 3 rage, so you'll net 2 rage as long as you have 1 rage to use. So if you've completely been rage drained with 0 rage, you will not be able to use this spell. The next spell is Blade Storm, which is a 2 rage white active spell that is similar to the protective spell that Namaka and Fafnir have, which will dodge all non-beam attacks for 3 seconds and damage nearby towers for 6% of Dragon's HP every 1 second, and will have an 8-second cooldown. So this will be very useful for this dragon avoiding mage super shots, allowing it some time to destroy the at least red mage and perhaps even the blue mage before this Blade Storm spell runs out. And I probably would destroy the red mage first so that you can use the freeze spell, because then if the blue mage still fires a super shot, you can freeze it in the air. If you take the blue mage out first and get hit by a super shot after that, then you will not be able to avoid it, and you will be at 0 rage and not be able to use your spells. The runes and glyphs will decrease Delight in Destruction's cooldown, which will be essential for allowing you to cast your rage regenerating spell more frequently, as well as increase warrior HP, which is important for all warriors. So when you first come around the corner with the Nav, I would use Destroyer's Wrath to increase your breath damage, because that will allow you to take out some key towers as quick as possible. Then you would want to activate Blade Storm at the last moment possible before the super shots or damage hits you, so that you can have that duration of the spell lasting as long as possible. This will protect you from mage drain as well as damage, but it will not protect you from beam attacks like storm towers or ice turrets. And then after you destroy the red mage first, it will allow you to use Cower in Fear to freeze the towers, especially if the blue mage or another mage on the island still has a super shot. Then you can avoid the super shot as well as the damage from the other towers for 3.5 seconds, which is quite a significant amount of time, at which point you will be able to use Cower in Fear immediately again if you would like to keep the towers frozen, or use Delight in Destruction as well if the blue mage has been destroyed by that point, in order to regenerate more rage, to continue to allow you to use the increased breath damage as well as chain on more freezes with Cower in Fear. I think Danav is going to be a very strong dragon for a couple of reasons. Not only is it a warrior which inherently have a very high health pool, so they are very tanky dragons, and also usually tend to be a little bit easier to fly, but also the spells that this dragon have seem to be very strong and can be used in a way that can allow you to really lock down an island if you're able to avoid being mage drained and are able to take out the red and blue mages quickly with the Destroyer's Wrath, because that is a lot of increased breath damage, which we've seen with Gig. If you're hitting equal to even higher tier towers, you can really burst down some towers quite quickly. Now, the difference between Gig and Danav is that Gig was still able to use spells after being rage drained, whereas if Danav is rage drained, then it will lose all effectiveness because he relies so much on his spells. Now, I have seen several people equipping the Death Gaze spell to Gig to allow them to clear the high level towers. Gig also has a free spell that will one-shot towers, so those are some key things to keep in mind. However, if you equip Death Gaze to Danav and you're able to quickly burn down the red mage with the increased breath damage, and then use the Death Gaze spell to take out the blue mage immediately after, then you would have the ability to freeze the towers as well as use Delight in Destruction in order to heal back some health that you may have lost, as well as to continue to gain rage. So I do think Danav will be quite strong as a dragon if used in the right way, potentially a little bit harder to fly than Gig is. And for me, I could actually see myself flying this dragon and enjoying it, but most likely I'll still go for the Invoker. Anyways, I hope this was helpful. I hope you're excited for these dragons, and good luck with the new season structure. Look out for my video coming soon that will discuss how to manage with the changes this season and still get a mythic dragon.